It has a record button right at the bottom.
Oh, I was looking up at the top. I found one anyway. So, yeah, how did we, I don't even remember how we sort of, it's only recent that we sort of discovered you, or vice versa, or what have you. I don't know.
It was a post. It was one of your posts where I think you were looking for a different perspective, or looking for, it was one of the posts that you posted on your Insta story.
Right.
And that's how we connected.
Yeah, so, yeah, the appropriation sort of discussion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you seeing? Dare you say?
No, I was curious to know what was it that you were looking for, or seeking, or trying to understand. And I think that was where I then approached in, or came in to say, okay, I'm willing to hear your perspective, or what is it that you're trying to understand?
It's a good question. There's part of me that likes to feel awkward, because that's where the challenges are. That's where the learning occurs.
That's my coffee machine.
That's all right. And it was kind of like a lot of the conversations I've been seeing seemed really westernized in a way, which is obviously going to happen because it's occurring in the West, and just didn't really seem to be challenging in any way. But I don't know. It seemed a very watered down conversation that's occurring, with not a huge amount of depth to it. And then there's been a lot of almost, I think you've seen it, the like politicizing it all, and yeah, it's just I should just stop watching it all.
Yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot to take in, and there are different, the way I look at it, there are different perspectives. When we talk about the philosophy itself, personally, I don't find the philosophy itself is not political, but it is the lens through which we look at that can make it political. It's become political, I feel, because of what's happening in the West. And I think it started gaining more traction with the movement of the Black Lives, and which is important, needs change, and they obviously need support. That's totally different when we come to talk about yoga. So I feel something has happened where both have been mixed together or joined together. So now it's not just yoga, but it's everything put together as a whole. So what I'm trying to understand is that we need to look at it from different angles. Yes, the movement for racism needs to be addressed. The movement for educating and teaching yoga and appreciating the practice and needs to be addressed. Inclusivity, including Indian teachers, South Asian teachers, yes, it needs to be addressed. But they're all different, completely different compartments.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that it's difficult to merge all of them together, and that's what's happening. Everything is being merged. So it's difficult to say A, B, or C. I'm trying to put it in a way that will not downplay those who are trying to bring change, or who are looking at it from a different angle.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because they're coming from the right place. Like, it just, I wonder, from what you're saying, sort of, it's a case of if you focus on your own practice, and then you bring yourself as, being yoga to these other realms, really.
Correct.
Rather, it seems we're almost trying to bring, like the Black Lives Matter conversation, we're trying to bring that into yoga rather than the other way around, almost.
Yes. And that's where I find is where a lot of the issues come up. Your philosophy itself, you cannot chop and change that, because that philosophy has been with us for years. So even if we say, oh, we need to change it in a certain way, then what we're doing is changing the whole system. The system is created by us, by people. So obviously it's through our practice that we then bring change, not only into ourselves, but then we bring change into the community. But then to say, and it's not, to me, it's not the other way around.
Yeah.
It has to go inward and outward. So that's where I find there's a lot of confusion. I'm confused.
This is it, isn't it?
And there are many teachers who are like me, who are also confused. Because we see the philosophy as non-changeable. You can't really change the philosophy. And being Indian, I may have grown up different parts of the world, but there are many other Indian teachers who've grown up in different parts of the world who come with their own perspective. And it's not to say that my perspective is any better than theirs. It's just that we see things maybe a little different. So we need to take into consideration all those angles as well when we're discussing or talking about change. I grew up in the Arya Samaj community, or with the philosophy of Arya Samaj. And in there, it was, we didn't have patriarchy. So my grandmother used to recite the shlokas, and she used to perform the Havan rites. And now, if you come to think of it, and during her time, it was only the Brahmins or the men who could do it. But she did it. And so for me, that was what I grew up with. So I don't see that in the community that I grew up, I don't see the patriarchy, but I see it elsewhere. So to say that it exists completely is a little false. My household, we didn't have it.
Yeah.
In fact, we're more, whatever the mum says or whatever I say or whatever the women, we hold the fort. We're pretty strong in our own way. So we stand up for things. I was always had this, you stand up for your rights, you stand up for your worth. You do as much as what your brother's also doing. There is no competition, there is no favoritism. We were all given equal chances. So I don't see anyone discussing that aspect of the philosophy. Arya Samaj, we were against the Parda system. We were against the sati, child marriages. So it was a community that started in 1875 or 1873, something like that. So yeah, it was quite a strong movement, and my grandparents were very much, they grew up with that philosophy.
So, it sounds beautiful to be around.
Yeah, so coming from that perspective, again, we didn't believe in worshipping idols or deities. So to me, you'll probably see in my household, I'll probably have one or two idols, but they're not for worshipping. I keep them there because I feel a connection to it.
So did you have worship, was it like Bhakti or?
So for us,
worship?
universe Om.
Okay.
Was Om. Om was your God. And And that's whom we sort of related to. So till today, but in my mom's house, you won't see any deities. But whereas in my sister-in-law's house, you'll see many of them. So that's, again, that comes from a different perspective. And her deities are placed lower, but on a pedestal, but lower, not higher. So in saying this is that we all have our own ways. And as long as you find that connection, you feel connected, you have that relationship, where you place your deity, you will obviously then place it at a point or at a place of respect. So whether it is on a table slightly lower or on a table slightly higher, that's a personal choice.
So, I mean, it makes sense really that you're kind of drawn, in my mind anyway, it makes sense, that you're drawn to the yoga that you're meant to learn the lessons from in this lifetime almost. So, you know, yes, there are the patriarchal forms of yoga,
Mm-hmm. and
perhaps people are naturally drawn to them and detest them, you know, a lot of them, for the right reasons, for that's the learning that they're to be receiving. I don't know.
So in India, now you have a lot of women teaching yoga. You also have men teaching yoga. And the word guru in the West is loosely used. And some of them are self-proclaimed gurus. Now, do we as students give our control to them? Do they take our control? I don't know how that works. I don't know how that dynamic works. But if someone says to me, "Oh, Savira, you're a guru," for me, my instant reaction would be, "No, I'm not," because I don't have that kind of information. I don't know that. So it's my responsibility at that point is to say something. Now, if you don't say it, then yes, you're going to, is it the ego that comes in? Definitely.
Yeah.
So whether you're a guru or you're somebody that holds power, whether it's in the yoga field or in the teaching field or in a medical field, then anyone who holds that kind of power can misuse it.
Yeah. And it seems, you know, it's a case of almost, if you want a following, you're kind of geared up to abuse power. You know, I mean, I have a sort of different mental image and stuff like that of things, but like, to me, in my understanding, a guru will never say that they're a guru if they're a true guru.
I don't know, because I've never met. Never met. So for me it's a tough one, because in those days, in the ancient days, everything was taught through word of mouth, right? Guru, Shishya. Nowadays, guru is also teacher. As you know, you go to school, what did your teacher say? Instead of saying teacher, you'll probably say guru. There are many levels of guru. Now, when I sometimes go to India and I teach there, I know many students who will say Guruji. And I always say, no, I'm not Guruji. Just call me by my name. And they'll say, no, Guruji means teacher respect, with G as the respect. So certain things I will accept because that's how they see it. But I also remind them that, you know, you and me, there's no difference between you and I.
Yeah.
I may teach, but I'm teaching from my perspective, and I'm learning from you as a student as well.
Yeah.
So we're teaching each other, we're exchanging information, we're exchanging knowledge and experience. That's what we're doing. But I'm not at that level where I know everything. I will never know everything.
Yeah.
So my I have to then think at that point, what is the reason for me to assume that role? Is it to feed my ego? Is it the result that I want? Is it, do I want to be known? Do I want people to follow me? So these are things we as human beings need to really think through as to what is our motive, what is our reason for doing something.
That's yoga as well, though, isn't it? This is, part of the thing that I never get as well is like, if you're on the path of yoga and, you keep on that path, you can't end up abusing any power because, if someone's got to a stage where they're abusing power, they've stopped doing yoga, in my mind. Because I can't see how you can. You must, it doesn't fathom. I don't know.
It's on one hand, you have to put whatever you've learned, whatever you've read, into practice. It cannot just be taking in information, knowledge, reading. It has to be put into practice, because what may work for you may not work for me. And yoga is not linear. There's so many ways that we can move through the process of learning, of understanding who we are. And even then, do we really know ourselves? No. Even then, are we honest with ourselves? I don't know. You see,
brain gets in the way, doesn't it?
It is. So at what point do we feel that, yes, we're being honest within ourselves? And yes, at what point are we looking at something from our attachments? And if we want change, then are we doing it because it's what's happened to me personally, and so I'm going to go and move into that direction? So there's a lot of self-study that we need to go through. Are we moving really fast at the moment in creating this movement? I think so, personally.
Yeah. And I think, I've definitely noticed it myself personally, but I think, as well, having the whole COVID thing beforehand as well, it seems to have just boiled up a lot under the surface, and it's like something to release onto. And yeah, that's definitely something I've observed in myself. It's like, why have I reacted that way? What's going on here? Yeah.
It's actually 2020 is the year where it's just forced us to go inward. And we've had all these bubbling, but we've suppressed them. So something broke, and COVID was the thing that happened, and everything is coming out. Now we're projecting everything that we feel, that we don't like, that we see the injustice, into every aspect of our life. But somewhere or the other, we need to rein in and choose what is it that we need to really focus on or fight for. Yes, racism is one of it. Yes, the way yoga is being taught, showcased, needs to be changed. But are we coming from anger to create that change? Are we coming from a place of calm, clarity, compassion to create that change? So that's how I am seeing things, and that's how I am looking at it. So I may not voice my opinion, but it doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. And so when you're told you're sitting silent, not really. If we think of that quote in the Gita, there is action in inaction and the other way around. We have to really think, what are my attachments? Because if I'm moving forward, then there's definitely something happening that's propelling me to go forward. But am I moving forward so that to fulfill the need that I've been hurt or something's been taken away from me, or then that still is not yoga. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's the counter, not counter, but like the other side of that I saw at the time was so I was very vocal at stages because I was thinking about the students, and a case of, you know, if I was a black student watching my teacher be completely silent right now, I'd be going, what do they think? Well, I don't know whether to trust them, you know. So that was like the other side of the same coin, and it was, yeah, it was it was like, what do we do? I sit here and think, you know, and try and think, or, you know, be vocal at this. Yeah, it kind of felt it needed both things at exact the same time, really.
But then again, there's also the balance of both things.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, I was vocal to some point, but then I found that after a while, that vocalness or vocalization becomes, I hate to say the word, but verbal diarrhea after a while.
Yeah.
Because the impact and the value slowly begins to die down. So I'd rather come up or say something that has meaning, value, where and when can I add to or give to, rather than just churn it out.
As well,
But
what's going on?
No, I was going to say, but at the same time, you have to sit and see, am I churning out words that because it's what other people want to hear?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say as well, I've forgotten what it was now, sorry. No, it's completely gone from me. It'll just appear again. But yeah, the whole discussion. So at the moment, it seems that what's being shared, I think we talked about this a little bit, was about how it's kind of Western Indian heritage teachers' voices being shared, which, you know, is right. It doesn't seem that many like teachers in India are being shared or even looked towards. So I don't know whether it's because they're not saying anything or whether it's just a sort of bias. I don't know.
So I've lived in India for about 5 to 6 years teaching there, teaching yoga. And I've also spoken to a few Indian teachers, and like I said, it's subjective. And each one say or look at it as they can say whatever they want. So let me rephrase this. They understand and they know what's going on. They see it differently. They look at this yoga is a philosophy, it's a way of life. So that is what their approach is coming from. I've spoken to one or two, and most of them said, look, it's a subjective practice. It's up to them to decide what they want to do. But there is a clear difference between Indian teachers in India and Indian teachers living in the West. Yes, the teachers in the West have been through racism. Their voices are not heard, and you don't see them in yoga studios. I understand that perspective. But what the Indian teachers I see in India is their focus is, we don't mind who comes into the studio. We're just going to teach our practice or our philosophy. It doesn't shake them as to what's happening in the West. And a lot of the things that are happening in the West, I think is coming also from political standing up because, you know, they face it a lot more than you face it in India. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but this is a practice happening in India, so there will be no change there. Indian teachers are being, you see them there. You see them teaching. But at the same time, you also see a lot of Western teachers teaching in India. Whereas in the US or in the West, you don't see Indian teachers. So there's that. But a lot of them are like, no, it's...
Well, I guess the conversation almost doesn't have to happen there, because, you know, yoga is whereas here we have to be respectful, because it's not our tradition. Like, as a Westerner, as especially a white male Westerner, like, it's not my tradition. You know, it feels in my blood, but it's not mine to sort of play around with as such. Whereas in India, it's theirs, so yeah, they don't need the conversation to the same degree.
Yeah, the conversation is not there. The only conversation that I think sometimes that creates this distinction is, so I put myself, I've taught in the US, in the West, and I've taught in India. I look at the philosophy aspect of it, right? And so I'm not as vocal as the West is, the Indian teachers in the West. For the only reason is my perspective is different in terms of, yes, there's change needed, but there's a way to do it. And not everything is what's the word I would say is, it's negative, right? I'm trying to think of a word. One needs to see both sides. And I think right now it's only a Western side that we're seeing. I'm trying to see both the Indian and the Western, and certain things, like, for example, in India, to say namaste has different meanings to it, different connotations to it. So it's very difficult to say you cannot use namaste or you should use namaste. Whereas in the West, they're saying you cannot use namaste at the end of a class. So for me, I use namaste, I say it. I say it at the end of my class, I say it in the beginning of my class, because it has different connotations, different meanings, different depth to it. So that's what the Indian side of teaching, my perspective, is that they're not, they can't see why there's so much hue and cry about someone saying namaste or someone dressing up in an Indian outfit, or someone wearing a bindi, or someone saying a Sanskrit name. They don't understand why there's so much.
I do wonder about it, and like, and again, it's self-observation. There's almost what's called like spiritual materialism, or like one-upmanship of what's called wokeness. You know, it's like, you can't do that, and I'm guilty of it, but like, it does seem like, look, this is my understanding is more superior than yours because I'm not using that word, and so on and so forth. Like,
I don't know, I think it's very difficult to really see or say, because yoga is such a vast subject, and with so many philosophies, so many perspectives and point of views, that how can we say you need to do this and that's it? Because then you're stunting someone's growth, right? If you tell me, Savira, you cannot use namaste, and you sitting silent being an Asian teacher, how can you say that? You don't know what I'm doing behind. You're seeing whatever you see on social media,
Yeah.
which is very different to what my life is and what I've been through. No one knows, or you don't have any idea that, yes, I've taught in India, I've taught in the West, I've lived in both countries long enough to know. But that's the thing. It's because people will take the information from one or a couple of sources, and that's it. So a lot of our point of views are not seen because, or if they're seen, they're sort of, no, you don't know what you're talking about. So for me, the way I look at things is, practice, get onto your mat, self-practice, ask the questions yourself. Don't necessarily take everything that is being said to you as reality or as truth.
Yeah, totally. And as well, it seems like, one person will say a whole load of things, and that someone will say some stuff that might be true and some stuff that might be false, but it's all taken as truth, or it's all taken as false. Yeah, it's not sort of picking out the bits that seem relevant and irrelevant almost.
In something like this, we have to be open. If we're yoga teachers, we need to be open to communication, open to listen. Whether you're a brown teacher or a white teacher or a black teacher, it doesn't matter what color you are. If you are on the path of yoga, if you are teaching yoga, we need to be open. My practice is going to be very different to your practice. And what I may have learned through my practice, it's my karma. It is through my actions. Yes, it will have a rippling effect because how I communicate will have that rippling effect with you, which then will have to the next.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful. And when we enter this field, so A may have an experience, B will have another experience, C will have another experience. And their approach to the practice is also going to vary. But that doesn't mean that either one of them are wrong or either one of them are right. It's gray. The practice of yoga is gray. So, and that's why I'm having a hard time trying to understand what a lot of the yoga teachers in the West are trying to achieve or accomplish. So it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of this, and it's a little bit of that. And each of those little bits are important. But I think they have their space different.
Do you think as well social media has something to play in that?
Oh yeah.
Like it's almost like if you're on social media, you kind of have to be vocal.
Yeah, of course. You don't have to be on social media otherwise. You can be, you can go outside and be vocal, people will listen to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
True, but it just seems in social media, you've got a predetermined audience right in front of you.
Absolutely.
In the outside, I've got to go and find someone to be vocal with.
Yeah, see, like a lot of the words that we see now or we read on social media, I find them hurtful.
Right.
And yeah, okay, we know that there's a dominant culture and we know what has happened, but do we need to constantly use those words? Because the more we use them, the more, if you really think about it, if you go down to the philosophy, if I keep using those words, then I am creating, again, karma for myself.
Yeah, reinforcing it as well.
So in doing that, if I'm constantly if I'm trying to educate somebody, and the more I use these words, then am I not doing what has been done to me?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm very reluctant to say a lot on social media.
So again, it goes back to focusing on yoga.
It is your self-practice. That's it. You will understand even scriptures. Our scriptures. So I was talking to somebody and I wanted to understand a word called Sankhya. Now, Sankhya on its own is a philosophy, but in the Bhagavad Gita, Sankhya has been used as self-inquiry. So we cannot just take Sankhya out from the Gita and say, excuse me, that is self-inquiry. We have to put things into perspective, into context, and then talk. Because our philosophy, just like our language, has layers and layers and layers of meaning. So even samadhi has different layers to it. So when you say, let's all be free and let's find samadhi, to me, it's like, I don't know. I understand what you're looking for. I understand that you want freedom, liberation, and unless we are all free, none of us are free. And I personally believe that that will never happen in this lifetime or in my next lifetime. Our world has been created that to have that just society where everyone is free and equal. It's a dream.
Yeah.
It's a dream. We can work towards it. I'm not saying we don't. We can work towards it, but we also have to be realistic. Choose our battles. What is it that we really want to fight for?
It does seem that we're just being taught a million lessons in this lifetime, doesn't it?
It is. And I just feel what we can do, there's so much more we can do as a community than through division. So instead of saying Asian Indian teachers in the West and Indian teachers in India, we don't see eye to eye, well, maybe we need to come together and see what is it? Why is this happening? Why aren't we seeing things eye to eye? We need to also understand that many have not lived long enough in India. And true, many of the Indian teachers haven't seen what it's like to teach in the West. So I think there's a lot of that communication missing.
Yeah.
And it's immediate judgment.
And then how do we actually go about starting that, really? That's, I guess.
Communication, open communication.
Yeah.
Is to listen. So we're very quick to judge. Very quick to judge. So yeah, it's a tough place to be in.
This as well, like, it's the right time for it all as well, because, you know, we've got the internet and things like that. So that communication is so much easier than it's ever been. You know, everything arrives at its right time, I guess, doesn't it? So we get all these lessons, all this building up, but we've also got all the tools around us to sort of almost not solve it, but you know what I mean, to develop it. Yeah, the internet's perfect for it, really.
It is. The only thing is that we've got so much information, no one's really ready to listen.
Yeah.
We're at this point where everyone wants to vocalize, nobody wants to listen. So the few who listen, they actually listen. They step back. That is part of your practice as well. It takes time to listen, to digest it, to absorb it, then take the next action. So for me, that is key. That is what my practice. Take it in, listen, make your own assessment in the sense, ask questions. Don't take anything at face value. And because an Indian teacher in the West has said this, doesn't mean an Indian teacher living in India will say it. Ask why. Even between Indian teachers in the West, there's also differences.
Yeah. And I guess as well, the Indian teachers in India, it's like you've been saying, it's all different.
It's very different. I'm always asking why. And their answer is simply, Savira, it's a subjective practice. First, and the main thing they say to me is yoga doesn't discriminate. So we're doing our duty, we're teaching. If that's their duty, then they do that.
Yeah. So I wonder sometimes whether the title, in inverted commas, of like yoga teacher is kind of a block, because as soon as you're almost labeling yourself that or whatever, you have to put stuff out there to almost show that you're a yoga teacher, rather than just being yoga.
Yeah, but we live in a world where now labels are important in order to know what you do. So comes yoga teacher, biology teacher, it's there. But the thing is, when we communicate, when we talk, we have to realize from which role are we communicating from. So like, for example, now, am I communicating from Savira, or am I communicating from yoga teacher, or am I communicating from mother? And you'll find that there'll be a combination of all. That when I am communicating with you, there'll be a combination of all these roles, and therefore all these different perspectives will come into the picture. So I have to be clear as to from what aspect am I coming from when we discuss a subject. So right now, what we're seeing is that there's hurt, there's racism, there's lack of diversity or inclusivity. So all of us are coming from that, and we're talking. And I think when you come from all of that, we lose the essence of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. That's the key thing, isn't it? That everyone having the conversation is wanting the same thing. We all want fairness and equality, and so on, in a beautiful society, don't we? Just
it's like, I want to touch my ear, I can go it this way or I can do it this way. Does it matter as long as I reach my ear?
Yeah.
How I get there, does it really matter? If I see my end result, whether I take 10 steps or someone takes 20 steps to the left and I to the right, does it matter? As long as we can meet there. I know that's.
And I guess as well, it doesn't even matter if we end up there as well,
Yeah, we each have our own. What matters is that whatever we learn through the process of yoga, that we are doing something about it. We can bring it into the community for community growth, help. If we're doing that, then whether I say namaste at the end of the class or at the beginning of the class, if I can appreciate the practice, the people, then does it matter?
It's all excellent points. It leaves me thinking, is like, why are we creating the problems in ourselves? Yeah, it's almost a case of playing out the the almost anger of everything, and you know, the bad bits and the inequality that we see in the world, we're just playing them out in the yoga land instead of almost where they should be.
It's like we're bringing a lot of focus to what has been wronged, as opposed to bringing the focus to what can be right,
Yeah.
what can be changed, and move it into that direction, as opposed to the other direction. And I would like to move it into that direction. Let's focus on things that we can now use, things that we can change, things that we can work towards from openness rather than from anger.
Yeah, it's definitely rooted me back down, I think, and yeah, a lot of food for thought, definitely. It's just, yeah, it's untangling everything, isn't it?
Which is the practice.
Yeah, everything feels very tangled up at once, and out of nowhere as well.
Right, but if you're aware of it, then you are practicing yoga.
Yeah.
Right? We got to be aware that this is what's happening, and it's up to you to decide which direction you want to, or where would you like to put your practice, your energy. Would you like to bring it into the form of dismantling it with anger, or now let's rebuild with compassion, openness, and with community? The choice you have to make.
Yeah, no, that does make perfect sense. And obviously, you know, we all want that the right one, don't we? You know, we don't want that anger and stuff inside of us, I guess.
No, and by telling somebody, I don't know, like I said, some of the words I personally find harsh. We're all privileged at some point in our lives, or each one of us. And it doesn't matter where we come from. We all are privileged, again, within context, depending on who we are comparing ourselves to.
Yeah, looking up or down, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. So how do we use that to better the community or educate?
Yeah. Focusing on how to benefit others rather than benefit ourselves, really, isn't it?
Yeah. You see, it's in benefiting others that that it then trickles out.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you're doing something because deep down you know that that is the right thing to do, you get so much more. I find satisfaction is the wrong word, but there's a certain sense of feeling touched, feeling union, or that by extending your hand out to help another, you are now moving more onto the human level of the person. You're looking at them from that humanity, from that being, as opposed to looking at it as, okay, you're a yoga teacher, you're white, and you did this wrong, and you did that wrong, and you need to do this, and you need to stop that, as opposed to, okay, I know I've done wrong as well. I know you've done wrong. So let's try and connect from a different level to rebuild together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It really is, though, isn't it? It's what we do need, I think. So it's just, yeah, how do we, we guess we have to each sort of do that individually in our own, like, again, our own self-practice, isn't it?
Right. You see, I've experienced, and I think I've also, the practice of yoga is, when you really get into it, it becomes a lonely practice. You because you go so much inside that when you actually start to bring what you've learned on the inside in your actions outside, sometimes a lot of people don't understand. So I find the practice of yoga is really one of moving on at your own. You're the only one there. And when your actions start to trickle out into the world or into your community, nobody really sees that. So what are we harping on about? Oh, you have to do this and you have to do this, you have to change that, and you have to, yeah, we all know that we want community, we want justice, we want, as you said, we want a just world. But do I have to shout it out to the world that this is what I'm doing? I can do it in my own way. I don't have to tell everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what I find is what I'm seeing right now.
Is there as well a kind of a financial thing involved? You know, it's a kind of, right, let's shout, and then, oh, I'm going to sell you a course to consider all of these things as well. Yeah, there seems quite a lot of books and things as well being written, and all sorts, you know.
Way of life.
Yeah.
It's, you know, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. They have to earn a living.
Yeah.
But for me, the only thing I will say is that everyone needs to question. Ask and ask and ask till you feel connected with that response.
I love the Swami Lakshman Jews. He says about questions and how we only ask the questions that we already know the answers to, essentially. And we, you know, we'll keep, like you said there, we'll keep asking until we get the answer that we know to be true, well, to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what takes us there, I guess.
Right. A lot of the times we'll ask a question because it gives validation to our response to what we're thinking.
Yeah.
So we'll never ask a question that will never give that validation, because we don't want to be in that position. And I think it's important to be in that position.
Yeah, as I say, the growth is in the discomfort, really, isn't it? Yeah, definitely given me lots of beautiful insight and food for thought, and yeah.
I hope so. I mean, sometimes even I lose my train of thought, so I do apologize.
No. How can I benefit you? Like, this is like I said at the start before we were recording, was like, it feels this conversation's purely selfish. So I don't know how.
It's not. Why look at it as selfish? It's not. It's given me the opportunity to express.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So it's not selfish.
Okay.
So when you break that down, when you take the word selfish away, you're helping me and I'm helping you.
Okay.
That's it.
That's fine then. I will take your word for that, that you receive benefits of some way. But yeah, I mean, definitely, like, just, yeah, I do appreciate finding you on social media, and this is what keeps me in social media, is these sort of connections that, you know, it's, yeah, this is the good aspect of social media, and then you've got the triggering aspect, which is also good. You know, they're all necessary.
We need a bit of both in order to really, the triggering aspect is good to have because it shakes us up.
Yeah.
And yet you also need to have the other side to it, to also bring together. Now start to find which is it you want. In life, you're always going to be balancing between the two. That is life, and that is our practice.
And all is yoga.
Yep.
basically.
Definitely.
So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there's not really anything I have to ask anymore.
That's fine.
And you've been wonderfully eloquent, and yeah, it clarifies a lot in my mind of, yeah, the difficulties I've been seeing, that I've personally had, and my own actions, which I kind of was schooling myself about anyway. But yeah, it does. Yeah, it's
Oh,
just
you're welcome.
bring it back to yoga, isn't it?
Yeah.
Each and every time.
Yep.
Indeed. Okay. Have you got anything else that you'd like to share, or
No, I mean,
any questions? Because you said about you kind of didn't understand the Western teachers, why they were doing all of this.
well, my question is,
As a West, because I'm a Western teacher, obviously, if
right.
you have any questions.
So here's the thing is that now that you're listening to a lot of what's happening, has it changed the way you teach? And has it become more of a teaching from the heart, or now has it become more I'm teaching from the head because of all the information?
I don't, so I've viewed teaching very differently recently. I don't think I can teach yoga. I only think the student can teach themselves yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an asana practice, all I'm doing is creating a space for them to realize the yoga. So setting up almost little not conditions, it sounds quite manipulative, but it kind of is. It's like setting up like deliberate, almost mini little triggers to help little realizations. Because like I say to my students is that, you know, everything I can teach you, you know, I can share a verse with you, but if I do that, you're only going to hear that. You're not going to realize it until something in life happens anyway for you to realize it anyway. So it's also me dictating your path if I share this verse with you, and I don't want to dictate your path. So it's all about setting up, just creating space, and then, you know, in their mind, in their body, trying to keep their mind in focus. So it doesn't come from my heart or my head, because it doesn't come from me, really.
But that's fair enough. But then do you find that because of what's happening right now, that there are white teachers who are maybe afraid to open the subject or talk about it, or do they see it the way we see it of what's happening, the cultural appropriation, or whether the use of namaste and the pronunciation? And I'm curious to know what the
Yeah,
debate.
I think it's, you know, it's kind of similar to everywhere, is that there's such variety. You know, there's people who are completely oblivious to it all, which is beautiful, and then you've got people who are really deep in it all, and you know, generally the people that I speak to are obviously similar to my mindset, so we're all sort of talking about it a lot, and you know, we're sharing our realizations with one another, talking to other people, and just trying to have the conversation, reach understandings. And then there's other, you know, there's others that don't give a flying monkeys. They just want to teach. So yeah, again, it's not really one thing or another. It's it does seem that the ones that are in the depths of it almost are struggling. Like, and it's just out, the thing that there is out of pure love for yoga, and just wanting to be of the utmost respect to yoga. And you know, we see it's not our own, you know, to be meddling with. Like you say, it's a set you know, these are set teachings that have been around for thousands of years. They don't need changing. You know, that was actually a question that came to mind as well, is that because of the way the teachings are, there's so much room for interpretation.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of our interpretation comes from our Western lens, which was not where the teachings were created.
Yeah.
So it's you know, that there's a little bit of difficulty in that, I think, as well.
You see, that when the teachings, they were done in Sanskrit, and like I said, our language has layers to it. So one word can have a different meaning depending on the context. And our pronunciation as well, we don't just have the 26 alphabet letters, we have more. So even when you put the letter D and say something with the letter D, will change the pronunciation if there is no H attached to it. Duh and duh, two very different. Ah. So you have these various pronunciations. And for example, the change, if you just mispronounce a vowel, it will mean something completely different. Dhakkan means a lid on a pot. Dhadkan means the heart. So the way we pronounce it will represent something else. So now it's difficult from a Western perspective because the language and the way the thought process many of you have grown up with is very different to Indian. So it's going to be very difficult to see it from an Indian perspective. So yes, you will have your Western thinking there, but we need to take that into consideration. It's like taking me and putting it, asking me to learn German, for example. I could probably learn the language, but I'll never know the subtle layers of the language and the culture of the language. But yeah. I'm not gonna hold you, I'm not gonna, bog you down with it, because I have to understand that at the same time.
And so I guess this is why, again, we have to experience it rather than try to understand it, really.
Does it, teachers, has it changed teachers' way of teaching?
In what way, sorry?
So in the sense that knowing now that a lot of it has, you shouldn't use this and you shouldn't do that, with cultural appropriation, has it changed their style of teaching?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, it changes the words that come out.
Okay.
And I think people are just being a lot more thoughtful.
Okay.
As to what they're teaching, it's probably about the same, I'd say. I don't know. Like in the West, like I've read a fair bit of like the history of yoga in the West, and the appropriation discussion has been since day one. In England there was kind of like almost a battle between like the British Yoga Wheel and another group, I can't remember who they were, set up in, and I think it was the British Yoga Wheel were the ones that were saying, right, a class has to be this % of meditation, this % of philosophy, and then this % of asana. Whereas the others were like, no, just asana, and so it's just it will always continue. I think it's a never-ending conversation almost.
But has this helped, this conversation with what's happening in the yoga world? Has it helped the way now white yoga teachers, do they feel more appreciative of the culture?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I think yoga will always, wherever it is, because of the way yoga is and the way the journey of yoga is within the self, yoga will always return back to yoga. Almost. So once you've started the journey, that's all that's needed really. Is once that seed is sown,
Yeah.
That's it. So yeah, slowly over time, I think it is changing. I think as well, COVID. I'm getting blinded by the sun. Sorry. It's almost like COVID is doing the same for us as well. In that it's really unfortunate, but a lot of studios are going out of business.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously horrible that people are losing their livelihood, their passion, everything. But, is the studio model appropriate for yoga? I'm not going to answer that, but it seems maybe not, hence something's occurring to sort of push that away slowly.
Right.
Yeah, it seems to always self-heal in a way.
But at the same time, has it created confusion, cultural appropriation?
Yeah.
In
But
what
I think that's almost necessary to unpick it all. Like the whole spiritual, the whole spiritual journey is kind of, in my experience, has been like, you start here and you're like, la, 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 or more like, get here, and then you come back to the start anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I see everything as a spiral. So the whole journey is a spiral. So you keep returning to the same point, but at a slightly different point. And it seems the same sort of thing with the appropriation discussion is like, from this discussion having with you, is like, I've just been like, it matters so much, it matters so much, it matters so much. Like at the start, I was like, oh, it doesn't really matter. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but I'm at the same point now after this conversation, but at a slightly different layer of understanding of it. So yeah, I think it is an important part of the journey. And then maybe I'm not saying this is the right realization, but to just keep doing yoga and keep sharing yoga, and not get so muddled up in it all.
Yeah.
But you need to go into that muddy bits to realize that.
Right. But you need to go back in every now and again.
Yeah.
And every now and again, that going back in will be challenged by somebody or a practice or a place or an object that will challenge your thinking or a word. And then you'll go back again to that spiral, and then you'll come out thinking, oh, okay, I got it now. And that's basically it. So we cannot be bogged down by saying it is either this or that, because it doesn't exist. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So we have to go through the gray. And most of our practice is really gray. So yeah, but it's good to know that the cultural appropriation subject that we see around on social media is making a difference. It's helping, and that's nice.
Yeah.
Because, then you obviously know there's change coming. Change is happening.
I mean, that's the thing. We can't ever not change, really.
No.
It's the only constant, isn't it? So.
But it changes in many ways that sometimes we also don't like the way we are when we see that change.
Yeah.
But we also have to accept that there is something in there. We're not all perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it has been a very useful for me conversation, and it will change. Yeah, it will definitely change me.
Yeah.
So
it definitely does change me. Knowing now, when you say yes, the cultural appropriation, when you see it, you're understanding it. Yeah, I feel like, okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So that extra anger, let's say if I had, will diminish. So you've helped me in a way.
Yeah. Now, as I say, I think for everyone in the conversation, it is out of pure love for yoga, and you know that's the key bit.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you didn't love the yoga, you wouldn't bother entering in the conversation.
Yeah. And then all this wouldn't affect you.
No. So yeah, it is out of love and honor for yoga, and
Well, that's good.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Appreciative of you and of yoga as well, obviously.
Oh, thank you so much. Now I'm going to go and do some cooking.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I really, as I say,
Really nice. Thank you, Jonathan.
appreciate it. All right, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.